I'm Katherine Johnson, and I work at the Sedgwick County Conservation District. The work of the district is to promote and facilitate conservation of natural resources. Two of these are soil and water. One conservation strategy we have been learning about to address these two resources is the use of cover crops. I recently visited with one of our board supervisors, Doug Kohls, at his farm to learn about some experimental cover crop plots that he planted in early August. So Doug, if you could start by just telling us a little history of the farm. How did you come to be in this place? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. This farm belonged to my great-grandfather and has been passed on through the years and to where I own it now. And I started farming in about 1974 with it's like 120 acres or so, and I did a lot of custom round baling at the time, and kept me involved in agriculture and worked other jobs during the winters, and but eventually kept doing more farming and less baling and less other jobs, and so now it's become full-time farming for quite a few years now. And so that's kind of how I got started with the farming and got here into this operation.
Okay. And when did you start hearing about cover crops or other kinds of soil health strategies?
Probably for the last 15 to 20 years, I've been learning more and hearing more of no-till. And so I've started no-tilling a little bit, tried that on a couple of fields probably about 15 years ago. And just kind of worked it in slowly. And every year maybe we'd do a little bit more no-tilling. And so I've worked at that, part no-till, part conventional tillage of stubble mulch chiseling mostly, and also some moldboard plowing. But over the years worked a little bit more towards the no-till, and in 2016 September, when we had that big 8 to 10 inch rain that did a lot of washing and on my fields that were tilled, I had a lot of soil moved off the fields and down to the bottom edges of the fields, and we had to hire scrapers to come and move them back up and rebuild terraces, and was a really big issue. And compared that with the fields that were no-tilled, that I didn't really have much soil movement. There were some ditches here and there, but otherwise the soil stayed in place basically, and that's really what kind of convinced me that even though there are issues with no-till and everything's not perfect with it, that it definitely helped to keep the soil in place from the water erosion, as well as wind erosion is just pretty much eliminated with leaving your stubble stand on the fields. So that's how I've got to where I'm at with the no-till, and I still do till some land when I need to help smooth it out and work it. I'm not just strictly no-till only, but 99% now. Mm-hmm. And then started hearing about cover crops over the past 5 to 7 years probably, and the fact that no-till helps conserve your soil, but it really wasn't a soil building. And so as scientists and farmers learn more about it, they've discovered more with the cover crops, the value of adding both the living roots, living plant growing there all the time, keeping the bacteria and fungus alive in the soil during those periods when you didn't have a cash crop growing, plus bringing all the material up on top, the growth that returns back to the soil eventually and helps add organic matter and brings your nutrients, keeps those up close to the surface for your next crops, cash crops. So I'm a slow learner, so I learned for years, and then I experimented a little bit with it for limited success here and there. And so this year I just worked out to try this cover crop situation in the wheat stubble this year after wheat harvest, and where I'm going to plant wheat again this fall in this spot. So that's where this test came in at, and I wanted to see them actually on my own field and be able to watch these crops, these various cover crop species grow and how they grow, their whole process throughout the growth, and how they compete with each other. So
That's great. Yeah, thank you. And that, I do want to say, that is a main reason that I wanted to interview you, is because I think that your perspective is very valuable as a person who's just studying it and trying things, and yeah, just over time adding to your repertoire, and someone willing to share the ups and the downs of it, that there's not a perfect solution, but
right.
here's what I've tried. And I think that's a really important story and perspective to share. So thank
Yep.
you. So then, had you tried planting cover crops before this round? I think that you had said you had done it in the past.
I've tried a couple times. I've planted cereal rye in the fall to grow it through the winter and in the spring, and then kill it, basically terminate it just before I plant soybeans.
Okay.
And I've had limited success with that. Others have done it and have done very well, so I just haven't got it worked out right yet, evidently. But I haven't necessarily got good stands, and partly just dry weather.
Right.
And when time I finish getting soybeans harvested and everything else done and wheat planted, and then I go to plant the rye, it's been kind of late in the year, and so it just hasn't seemed to be as beneficial as what I thought it would.
What was your motivation for doing this experiment? What made you decide to just give it a shot?
Just something fun to do, I guess, a little bit, and something to try. I wanted to see. I had this 18 acres right here west of our home, so I could see it easily, watch it, and I wanted to try these different crops out there, to watch them grow, and just to experience them for myself on my own land, to firsthand experience of how each thing grows,
Okay.
and be able to keep a close eye and close watch on it that way, and determine, kind of learn a little bit from it, and make some mistakes on a small scale, and hopefully will turn into something that I can see that the ones that will be of good benefit to us, that we might want to try on a larger scale.
So how would you know, like, how do you measure your success with this? If everything is ideal, how do you know it did exactly what you wanted?
Partly will be by observation. So if, such as we planted some clover out there, this was all planted August the 3rd, so it's been a month now, or a little over a month. And I plan to plant wheat there this fall, the first part of October, so it's only going to have a 2-month growing period. So I can see there's some crops that are probably not going to get much growth in that length of time. So that would be an observation factor. Just seeing the amount of growth that the different ones get, whether we want the volume of residue that they'll provide, whether we're looking for the deep taproot effect for loosening the soil. And so if some of them grow fast and really develop what we're looking for, then we'll say, yeah, that's worth trying again. If some of them are very slow, or just don't do what we're looking for, then for sure we'll think, well, that's probably not one of them that we want to do. Maybe use it, but in a different time frame, different system than what this is, where we just have 2 months before wheat planting time.
Okay, so Doug, I know that you used like 7 different mixes, I think, out there for your
Right.
experimental plots. Can you tell us a little bit about what species are in those and some of those functions? Why did you choose some of those
Different
things?
ones? Sure.
Mhm.
I guess I have like the sedan and millet. They grow tall and produce lots of forage. So the idea, what I think anyway, is that they will be returned back to the soil and build organic matter, as well as their root systems are very conducive to fungus and bacteria growth to help on that aspect. You have the brassicas, such as radishes, turnips. They have a taproot system that grows deep into the soil and helps to fracture and break up hard pans and hard layers of soil. And they also, as those roots rot away, then it provides openings in the soil for my cash crop roots to follow and go down and to be able to tap into moisture and nutrients that are a little deeper in the soil that otherwise my cash crops roots would not be able to penetrate into. Let's see, we have the legumes such as cowpeas, clover, mung beans, probably others. I can't think of all of them, but they will fix nitrogen from the atmosphere and add nitrogen to the soil, as well as having a good taproot system too. Usually that helps build the soil. Different ones have different amounts of carbon in them also, that has a different effect as far as some of them will decay quickly, some slowly. So you get this variety of different time frames and speeds of decay, and that they'll become available again to my cash crops later on. So it's for the purpose of having these root systems, building the soil, giving the bacteria and the fungus somewhere to survive and to grow and to flourish that helps the soil system, as well as the moisture retention and the moisture infiltration slowly. So that might take a few years of doing things like that on the field to really see a big benefit in that way, but it should hopefully show up fairly quickly on some of it. So, and then the other thing is that organic matter that I'm trying to improve and build the organic matter out there, which again will take years, but it's a start.
That's right. I noticed you had some flowering plants out there too. What is the purpose of the flowering ones?
Flowers attract insects, and many times we're trying to kill the insects. We don't like them, but there are the beneficial insects that if you can attract those beneficials and the flowers attract them, they also feed on a lot of the larvae of the insects that you don't want out there. And so you can build up your beneficial insect population with these flowering plants and helping your insect control, your pest control that way. So that's what I want to see out of the flowers, and so that's, plus it makes a colorful
That's right.
crop.
That's right. Great. What are other short-term benefits? Like I'm thinking, do you anticipate that you might see a benefit to the yield of the wheat that follows the cover crops?
I'm hoping to see a benefit, and we'll measure that when we cut the wheat next summer. We'll measure each strip, the amount of wheat that comes off of each strip, and do that as a test and see if we see a difference. But to your previous comment, it may be 2 or 3 years down the road that we'll see the benefit maybe. I don't really know, but that's quite possible that it'll be a couple of years and a couple crops later that the benefit really shows up as all this material breaks down and the soil is loosened and things begin to slowly improve. I'm not sure how much improvement there will be immediately and in 1 year.
Okay.
But I'm hoping there'll be some and it'll show up.
Okay. And then just thinking about the lifespan of the cover crop, then, I mean, generally people will terminate it in some way to plant something into there afterwards. So there's multiple ways to terminate a cover crop. I'm just thinking people who haven't tried it or for whom this is new. Can you talk about the different ways that people might terminate a cover crop?
One way is spraying, chemically spray and kill, and that's about the only option I have to do. And another way is by rolling it down, depending on the crop, what it is. I've seen a lot of times where they do that with rye, the cereal rye. If it gets big enough and the stem is hollow and mature enough, they can roll it and it just breaks it over and it lays down and dies right there pretty easily. I think that is critical timing, because if you go too soon, it's not going to break over and die. It'll continue to grow. So it's a timing issue. But that's one way. The other way sometimes is just a winter kill. You know, some of the crops will freeze out in the winter, and some of them will survive depending on the winter. They'll get through if it's not a real harsh cold winter. But a lot of them would not make it through the winter. As far as some of the brassicas, I believe, and the collards might survive a mild winter. But if it's really cold, then they'll go ahead and die anyway. And so they could be such as in a planting wheat situation. They possibly could be left growing some and just let the winter kill them. Sudan, of course, or millet, they would die in the winter. But
and then what about grazing? There's lots of conversation about partnering grazing and cover crops together.
The grazing seems to be really talked a lot about and promoted at as you said, like we went to the No-Till on the Plains conference, and for the last few years I've been hearing that. And as I've asked why that is, what does the cattle really do? And I believe, from what I understand, that all these nutrients have to go through a digestive system. And so whether it's the bacteria digesting, even for nitrogen to be available, it has to go through bacteria. They have to ingest it, and then it changes forms and makes it available to the plants. So also just your crops or your cover crops out there, and the cattle digest it, or sheep, goats, whatever. They digest it, it goes through their system, and it's changed, and in the manure then has a lot of bacteria, and that kind of jump starts the whole system on your fields adds all that extra bacteria out there that helps to break down all the material and all the residue, convert it into usable nutrients for the plants. And so from what I understand, that is a large part of it. It's that additional bacteria and fungus that comes because of that. And then also there's a possibility of a cash crop, basically, of putting pounds on your livestock to sell. So that could pay for your cover crop seed and all by your livestock gain. So that's maybe another avenue of income, is with the livestock plus the soil benefit.
Okay. So what do you think comes next for you with cover crop? experiments, or are you just going to wait and see what happens by the end of this month, where you're at, and then decide what you might try
Well,
next?
of course, I won't do this part again till next summer, so I'll be able to wait and see how this turns out for what I'll do next summer after wheat harvest type of thing. Usually after wheat harvest, I double crop either milo or soybeans, so this was a little different scenario that I had open to do this with. But I will this fall probably look into after my soybean harvest, try planting more cereal rye or something to go into those fields, and after soybeans or after my double crop milo comes off, and then those fields will be soybeans next spring. And so if I can get the rye planted and let them grow during that over the winter and into the spring, then I get that residue and benefit from both the growing roots in the soil that keeps the bacteria and fungus alive, plus the plant material and residue on top the next spring.
Right.
Type of thing. But again, for me, it makes it tough because the double crop milo is going to be late, and we've had this dry weather that we had about killed it and stopped the hedge growth, and now we're going to be waiting for new heads to come out probably, and it's going to be later and later before harvest of it. So, we end up being in November or December before we can plant, and then you start wondering if it's worth it or not.
Right. So definitely variables. I mean,
right.
That's kind of a theme throughout the conversation. Each year is different. Moisture is different.
Right.
Conditions
change each time. You can't just set your time period and say, okay, we're going to plant rye here at the October 20th.
Right.
Type of thing, which might be the ideal time, but yes, it doesn't happen.
Right.
That way, the ideal situation doesn't usually present itself.
Not only amount of moisture, but when does that moisture show up? Yeah,
right.
It changes everything.
Right.
So.
I have, to the people that have had real success with it, they will tell you that planting that cover crop is just as important as your crops. And so some that have worked with it, and they have maybe bought some more equipment, maybe another drill, maybe hired another person. So if I'm busy drilling wheat, it's instead of waiting until the wheat's drilled to start doing the cover crop, they would be out there getting it done by investing in more equipment and more people.
Okay.
That the importance of the cover crop is enough to offset the cost.
Okay.
So
speaking of cost, I do want to comment a little on the cost of the cover crop seed. Like I looked at your sheet where you compared the cost of each mix, and some of them are expensive. Like, what was the most expensive and the least expensive of the mixes that you tried?
The most expensive looks like was $40.70 per acre. And the least expensive was $14.56 per acre. And that was kind of a grazing mix. So I guess you get the benefit of the cheaper seed cost, plus if you have gained some cattle pounds, then you're doing good with that one.
Right.
So, but a lot of them are more in that 25 to 30 dollar range.
And you talked about it's almost like a bit of a prescription. I mean, maybe the $40 an acre would be worth it if it has specific benefits that a specific field needs or something.
Yep, a specific location, and you really need what it's going to do for you there. It may be worth it for sure.
Okay. So if there's someone watching this who's kind of sitting on the fence, wondering if they should dip their toe in and try cover crops, what is your advice to them? What word do you have for someone like that?
My advice would be to try it if you're interested in it, and And I've been many years getting to this point, but the seed's available now, and to try it fairly easily, and put some on your own farm, or I've even brought packets of seed home from conferences, and my wife has planted them in the garden, and we've watched them grow and see what they would do in the garden, really just to see what the plants are. But try it is what my intention is out here, and to have it growing right close by to where I can see these crops and see the different species grow. I can look at them every day or every week right here and see how they do and which ones are going to fill my need that I probably wouldn't think about just from reading about it, but actually seeing it and doing it, of what will actually be a benefit to me or not. But so if a person's interested, you just have to find a spot to try it and test it out, and see if what will work or not work on your farm and in your crop rotation, and if it'll be of benefit or not, and keep experimenting. The people that have been doing it for years will tell you they're still experimenting, they're still making mistakes, they're still having failures with it, and they keep changing and trying new things and different things, and as they do, they find things that really do work and more consistently work for them, and so to benefit your soil and make you some more money to be able to keep farming and growing your crops. And so the other thing would be, don't expect a lot out of it initially, and expect that it may not work out for you. And but if you are interested, don't give up. Just keep kind of trying it on some small acreage if you can, and keep messing with it. And if you have livestock, I could see a huge benefit. I mean, we've got a tremendous amount of grazing that would be available out there if I had some livestock to put on it, and there would be a huge benefit there to it that I'm not getting. So that would be another item to put into there, just depending on your own situation of how it would work out for you. But just try it and try a little bit. Don't give up if you're interested. Some will give up right away, and that's okay too. They've got a system that's working for them, and so that's all right. But you can try it and just experiment and have fun with it, and hopefully it turns into something that benefits your soil and your bottom line.
Right. Yeah, that's a good word. Thank you for that. So, yeah, I appreciate you sharing your story with us and being transparent about the ups and downs of it, and that it's not just a miraculous quick fix, but also that soil is worth it. I mean, obviously that soil is key for the farm.
Right.
So whatever you need to do to protect it is important. And if anyone wants to come and see the experiment that you've been doing, we're hoping to host an event at the end of the month, probably end of September or 1st of October, and people could come and take a look.
Yeah, that'd be great.
See it with their own eyes. So, and maybe we'll have to come back and when you harvest wheat next year and see if there's a visible difference in benefit.
Right. We'll check the visible, the observations that we can see the difference. We'll observe the crops this fall, like you say, the end of this month, 1st of October, to see which ones are going to look like they'll be of big benefit. And then when we harvest the wheat there next year, we'll cut these strips separately and weigh them to see if any of them added a benefit immediately to the soil, and that makes a difference in the wheat right away. And some of it may not show up for a couple of years, but we'll see.
Okay.
See what happens.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And I'll look forward to checking back with you and see how it goes.
Sure.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah.